Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Progress Pondcast with Martin Longman and me, Brendan Squire. This is, I believe, our 12th episode, and we have some new news. We have finally set up a Patreon where you can help support us and keep us podcasting. You can find us at patreon.com/Progress Pondcast. If that's too much to remember, just go to patreon.com and in Find a Creator, you can just you can just search us in there, Progress Podcast, and it will come up. There's various levels of subscription, and that will help us, well, keep our servers running, keep ourselves supplied with mic cords and electronics updates if we need something like that. And, helps pay for the editing and all that too, because it's a long job to break this down to about an hour, 45-minute podcast. So with that aside, let's get into the news. Let's get into what's going on in the world. And I think it's the first thing, and I think the thing that's on most people's mind is the debate debacle between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. It did not go so well for Mr. Biden, and immediately thereafter, there were there was a cascade of calls for Biden to step aside, to step down, to drop out of the race. And so we're here to talk about it because there's a whole bunch of points of view about this. I will say, speaking for myself, that I'm now working a summer job. And I did not get a chance to see much of the debate at all. I just saw some clips. It didn't seem to be too good. It was kind of painful to watch, to be honest. I did read a little bit of a few of the reactions. But as Marty knows, and I'm sure I've mentioned here on the podcast before, I have gotten to this point where I simply don't trust or I don't trust what I read in the media these days. This is probably a sad admission. I had to stop listening to NPR because I kept hearing reports of Biden recessions that never seemed to happen, red waves that never seemed to happen. And no matter what seemed to happen, it was always bad news for Biden. I've stopped reading the New York Times a long time ago, same damn thing. And the Washington Post, now that's been bought up by, now that the new editor-in-chief is someone from, I believe, the Daily Mail or the Telegraph, I forget which one, who's also been known for his own shady antics and is far right. The Washington Post seems to be a little bit less than trustworthy these days either. So when I read these calls for Mr. Biden to step down, I kind of meet it with a shrug, because I don't trust the people who are saying it. Most of them, to be honest, brokers. I think every single one of them has an agenda, and opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got at least one. That's basically where I stand on the whole thing. Someone can make a convincing case for me that Joe Biden should go away, then that's fine. But there's a hell of a lot of answers. There's a hell of a lot of questions I have after that. So with that, I'm going to leave it to Marty, because he watched the whole thing. I feel so sorry for you, for having put your brain through that. And
I actually couldn't watch it. I walked away a few times and then I came back. It was painful. I noticed, I knew that you weren't watching because I don't know if you were doing a concert or what you were doing.
I think I had practice.
Oh yeah, okay. I knew you were doing something musical, but I noticed I texted you at 9:16, which I guess, what was that, only 15 minutes into the debate or something? I don't know.
Yes, I
But
remember your text.
I said, we are so fucked. Trump is debating a nursing home resident.
Yes, that is
And
what you said.
and I hate to do this. I really do. Because I don't know if it was our second podcast that we dedicated to taking on Joe Klein
Yes,
for being a complete hack.
which he is.
Which he is. But he wrote or tweeted, Biden looked like a hospice patient who got lost on his way to the bathroom.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I laughed because of what I had texted you, which was essentially the same thing. And that was the impression that he gave. There was one point where my teenage son walked into the room and there was a split screen of Trump and Biden was had some vacant look on his face, and he just laughed and said Biden looks so funny, and like walked back upstairs. And I said to myself, that's all you need, 2 seconds of looking at the screen and you realize there's something wrong. And so yeah, it did not go well at all. And this was something that the Biden campaign wanted. They wanted an early debate. They
Oh yeah, I
wanted
know. I know.
yeah, they wanted this format, um, which I think the reason the format backfired is because it prevented Trump from acting like a raging asshole.
Yep.
I think in the first debate that they had back, you know, this is back in 2020, Trump was interrupting so much and doing all this. And if he hadn't been doing that, he might have done much better in the debate. But because he was just so obnoxious,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't really matter what he was saying. And in this case, he lied and lied and lied. But he
With no
went,
fact checking in real time.
yeah. And then Biden wasn't adroit enough to correct him or defend his own record or to string two thoughts together coherently. And it was kind of what I was afraid was going to happen in the State of the Union. And then he knocked that out of the park. And everybody said, oh, well, all this rumbling about him declining or having good days and bad days or whatever it was that was kind of circulating behind the scenes. I said, well, there's no evidence of that from the State of the Union. He looks fine. In fact, he looks good,
Yeah.
And
In fact,
so
I
this,
was reading that after the debate, the one we just had, that he did an appearance in North Carolina with Elton John, and he was on point. He was just like
yeah,
bang, he knocked it
yeah.
out of the park.
I even
And
heard that he was talking to people like in the back rooms after the debate and he was fine.
yeah, yep,
So it's really weird, but this does happen when you get older, you have good days, you have bad, you have good moments, you have bad. Um, and I mean, this is a really complex thing that we that we need to talk about today. But I'm just going to say, from my personal perspective, it's really what he convinced me of is that it would be irresponsible to think he can do 4 more years. That's to me the central problem. I think it's not such a big deal that he has good days and bad days. I don't think he's a complete zombie or something. I think he's
no,
capable of doing the job today. But you're asking for more than 4 more years. Um, and just like going back to Ronald Reagan, we quite, on the left, we quite justifiably said, there were signs that he was having mental decline and people ignored it. And he barely got through his second term. Uh, it was a
yeah.
rough last year for Reagan. And
Not that I
that's a
have any
risk.
sympathy for Ronald Reagan, but yes, I
Right, but
understand.
you need a president who's on top of things, Back then, height of the Cold War. Um, Now we have, I think, equally serious issues internationally.
Oh yeah,
So,
oh
yeah.
yeah,
And Biden's been on point. Biden has been navigating that. A lot of things, Ukraine, holding NATO together, trying to deal with Netanyahu and his whole mess. It is a lot. And I'm not saying he's been perfect, but he hasn't been incompetent.
oh
Um,
I think Biden, and I mean the the Israel situation aside, and I do not agree at all with the way the Biden administration has proceeded on Israel. I don't agree with the way the Democrats for years have proceeded with Israel. Um, the Nobody should have trusted Netanyahu to begin with, especially after the way he snubbed Obama and tried to trash the I think it was the Iran deal. So Biden
Yeah.
already knew what kind of character Netanyahu was, and apparently, behind the scenes regularly refers to the guy as an asshole. But still, the policy continues, and women and children keep dying. So aside from the Gaza situation, the I have been very happy with Joe Biden. Probably one of the best presidents of my adult lifetime, which I think Paul Krugman said. The
Yep.
I think Biden in many ways has been much more effective than Obama in getting things done. I think Obama played too nice with the Republicans for too long a time until he realized exactly it took Obama a minute or two to get up to speed that the Republicans were never going to be good faith negotiators for anything. And I think Biden realized that to begin with, and has moved forward in a way that's more effective. So yeah, I think he's been very good.
He's also he said he was going to get more bipartisan cooperation than Obama did. And people kind of rolled their eyes like, have you met the Republican Party? But he actually pulled it off. He
Yeah,
had a
I know.
bipartisan infrastructure bill. Um, so yeah, I mean, Biden has been an excellent president. But at a certain point, you have to look at it and say, hey, man, no one's going to forget what you've done. Um, and you go through his biography. His kids just been convicted of a crime. The all the death in his family. Uh, he has gone through a lot, and it's hard to see this happening. But there's an overwhelming chorus. It's not unanimous, but there is a very strong reaction to this, and not from just people from other factions of the Democratic Party or people who don't have Biden's interests at heart. Like, we're talking about people like Paul Krugman, like Tom Nichols, who are real solid Biden supporters who have written columns saying, you just got to bow out. There's too much at stake. You're not electable after that performance. And so I hear that today is Sunday, and I hear that Biden and Jill are up at Camp David, and maybe some other family members are up there, and they're having a discussion about what he should do. I also saw some reporting that he was feeling humiliated, and
I'm
that
sure he was. I'm sure he is.
and he realizes that those pictures of him looking with his mouth open and vacant eyes are going to be part of his legacy, and he's upset about it. I don't know if that reporting is accurate, but I wouldn't surprise me if that's true.
Yeah,
I
at
hope
all.
he's that self-aware, because that'll be a good sign. Um, so, you know, then you get to next steps, which is if he were to decide these these people are right, including a lot of people who are on my side. These people are right, and they say everything you've been saying about the importance of this election and the threat of Trump, that's true, and therefore someone else needs to be the candidate. And if he accepts that, then what do you do?
Yes. Well, that's the big question. Um, the names that I have some serious questions about that. Number one is I'm looking at the Lawyers, Guns, and Money posted a poll last night. He actually replaced it. Said he'd put up the wrong image. But I'm looking at this poll from Data for Progress from June 28th, and basically the only two people that come even which have Trump leading in almost all polls, but
Mhm.
in all polls, but it's like the only ones that are coming even close to beating him is Biden and Harris. That's the
Okay.
only ones. The I'm looking down the names. Buttigieg 44 to 47% with 9% undecided. Booker 44%, Trump 46%, 10% undecided. Newsom 44 to 47 with 9% undecided. Whitmer, another popular choice, 44 to 10%. 44% to 46% Trump with a 10%, space in between.
Yeah,
And
I took a look at that, and what struck me is there's like no real differentiation between any of them. Like, um, I mean, you can say Biden gets the closest or something, but the reality is none of them do that terribly, and none of them do much better than each other, right? I mean, it's all within the margin of error. It's basically saying anybody the Democrats run is a couple points behind Trump, right? Two, three, four, whatever. Am I right?
yeah,
Yeah.
right now.
So, yeah. And so, you know how name recognition works and all of that.
I do, which is why I'm highly doubtful about some of these folks.
Well,
We were
you,
talking about this yesterday that, I'm sure pretty much everybody knows who Biden and Kamala Harris are, but I don't
sure.
know how many people really know who Gavin Newsom is. And I'd be willing to bet a lot fewer know who Gretchen Whitmer is. I mean, maybe. Depends how much they keep up on the news if they don't live in Michigan, you know?
Well, that's why the polls don't mean anything, right? Like, that's why you have a whole bunch of names with the with high undecideds, and basically they're just what you're seeing is how many people are there on the Republican side and the Democratic side that are just going to vote for their candidate no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, and I know that if you ran all of those candidates, that at the end of it, the winner would be someone with a lot more name recognition who had beat out all the others. So it doesn't, what it basically reflects is that the Democrats are behind a couple points behind Trump, which is
Yes.
insane. Um, and so it really tells us nothing about whether or not anybody could change that. Now, to get to another important point, which is uh, how do you hold the Democratic coalition together if you change candidates? And so the number one issue is Kamala Harris. Obviously, she's the logical person to step in. That's her job. The vice president is there to step in if the president
Is
dies or,
incapacitated. Yep.
yeah, incapacitated. So a lot of people are just saying, well, I mean, they're not even considering her.
I know.
And
I have noticed that. Jamel Bowie over at the New York Times had some interesting commentary to make about that. Um, I saw Balloon Juice had some excerpts of it. I'd have to find it again. But and I sent some of that to you where he was
oh
like,
yeah,
and he's like, yeah, I've noticed that, everybody has all these wonderful white names to come up, but why are we not even talking about Kamala Harris, right? In
yeah,
addition,
I
there's a
mean,
real risk that the process of choosing a new nominee could tear open the visible seams of the Democratic Party. I have noticed that
you're,
only a handful of calls for Biden to leave are followed by, and Vice President Harris should take his place.
yeah,
More often, there is a call for a contested convention. But why exactly should Harris step aside? Why should Harris not be considered the presumptive nominee on account of her service as vice president or presence on the 2020 ticket? And should Harris be muscled out, how does this affect the new nominee's relationship with key parts of the Democratic base, specifically the black voters for whom Harris's presence on the ticket was an affirmation of Biden's political commitment to their communities?
right. And you had the Elie Mystal quote as well, where he
Yep.
said something to the effect of all these folks need to stop their Aaron Sorkin screenplays or whatever.
Go talk to your
Uh,
black friend.
yeah, go talk to your black friend and see what he thinks about skipping over Kamala Harris. And
Yeah.
these are great points, and they're a counterpoint to um, just I mean, in Bowie's case, he's making a much more sophisticated argument than that, which
Yes.
is which is that that's one issue and it's a big one, but also how is this going to work? at the convention, what kind of chaos is there? What guarantees do you have that anybody who comes in can raise money, that they can, you know, it's a lot. And he's saying, you could wind up doing more damage than with keeping Biden. And that's true. One of the things I know I mentioned to you that I like the idea of Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and I sent you some YouTubes
Yep.
of him. He was debating Ron DeSantis
Yep. I saw that.
on Sean Hannity's show. I don't know why that happened, but
I remember everybody was really, I remember at the time, I didn't watch it obviously, but at the time, everybody was really mad at Newsom because he was somehow validating Fox or something like that by agreeing to go on their program. Something
yeah,
like that.
he was debating with Hannity as the moderator.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And everybody was real mad. How could you validate Fox like that? Blah, blah. Okay.
And he just smoked DeSantis. I mean, he just destroyed him. And the thing that was most impressive about it was that he had so many, he was basically defending Biden, right? And also the state of California. But he was basically defending Biden, and he he had all the statistics at his fingertips. He had the arguments, about jobs, economic growth, what it was under Trump, what it was under Biden, all the numbers on the pandemic. Um, he just had everything at his fingertips so that he could respond to anything DeSantis said very quickly, succinctly, authoritatively, convincingly. And um, and it was all the things that Biden needed to be able to do in that debate, and he couldn't do. And it's Biden's own record, Um, so Newsom is really strong in that area. And then getting back to Kamala Harris, if you're talking about her somehow, if you're talking about her not being on the ticket and then that causing a rift, I think it's clear that Harris has to be on board with it. With
Hmm.
whatever happens, she has to be on board with it. And I would hope, you could go, if Newsom runs, he's going to vacate the governors, right? Uh, and in any case, he's, I think, term limited out. So the next election for governor of California, Newsom could say, Harris, I back you 100%. Obama could say, I back you 100%. Biden could say, I back you 100%. You go in there, you're not vice president anymore. You got an even better job. You're governor of California, you know? Um, some kind of compensation like that. Which is something that if you have Gretchen Whitmer, she's wonderful, and I think she'd be a great choice. But I think you run into, why not Harris instead of Whitmer to a much stronger degree. That's just my opinion, but it is an issue if it's not Harris. Now, why not Harris? I hate to say this, but Brett Stevens was part of that debate with Jamal Bowie
I,
at the New
I
York
I
Times
didn't
thing.
even read, and I read that debate, and I basically skipped everything Brett Stevens had to say. I don't take him seriously at all. Bedbug Brett.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But he said two things on there, and that struck me. Well, three things. The first thing he said is the whole point here is to get a candidate who can win. And so if Harris isn't that candidate, then it's who cares whether her feelings are hurt or whatever. Um,
I don't think
and
it's caring about her feelings. It's more
well,
about the black community, which is a huge part of the
yes.
base, and would be like, what the fuck?
Well, a lot of that has to do with how she responds to it, right? She's the leader on that. But get keeping on Brett Stevens for a moment, he said, she's very unpopular by polling, but the one main thing that she was given to do was immigration, and that's the biggest weakness for the Biden administration in terms of what people are upset about. So he's making a very good point that, like, look, this isn't just about looking at a poll and saying she's unpopular. This is also saying, like, she's unpopular in a way that's particularly potent, not even race related or gender related. Just like immigration is the biggest thing that's a strength for the right, both here and in Europe and everywhere else. And that's her biggest weakness, because people are unhappy with the Biden's immigration performance, and she's the point person. So I thought that was, and I think, because he comes from a Republican background, he does have insight in how they'll attack. So
I'm just going to interject real quick. This is almost a non sequitur, but speaking of another Stevens with a background in the Republican Party, Stuart Stevens has a pretty meaty quote. The Balloon Juice folks have it. They got it from June 29th, just yesterday, from Political Wire, and it's Stuart Stevens. I think you know Stuart Stevens.
yeah, he
Republican
was part of the McCain
Yeah.
campaign. Yeah.
Stuart Stevens over at in an article titled "Democrats Stop Panicking." And I just got the quote. I haven't read the whole article, but
Yeah.
as a former Republican who spent decades pointing out flaws in the Democratic Party, I watched the current Democratic panic over President Biden's debate performance with a mix of bafflement and nostalgia. It's baffling that so many Democrats are failing to rally around a wildly successful president after one bad night. But it does remind me of why Republicans defeated Democrats in so many races Republicans should have lost. Donald Trump has won one presidential election. He did so with about 46% of the popular vote. Mitt Romney lost with about 47%. The Republican Party lost its mind and decided that this one victory negated everything we know about politics, but it didn't. One debate does not change the structure of this presidential campaign. For all the talk of Mr. Biden's off night, what is lost is that Trump missed a great opportunity to reset his candidacy and greatly strengthen his position. So, yeah, while we got one, it seems that opinion on this, even on the right, and I guess Stuart Stevens, I wouldn't count him as the right anymore, but I definitely would count him as, even though he's independent now and more sympathetic to the Democrats because of Trump. It seems that even on the right side of the spectrum, there's a lot of doubt about what should happen now.
Yeah,
Right?
there's a definite split. There's a definite split. If Biden were winning in the polls at any point, really, this might be, I think, even more contentious. But
Just wanted to point out, though, a few minutes ago, you said when we're looking at the various other lineups against Trump, you said polls don't matter, and now you just said they do matter. A few
no,
minutes
I'm
ago,
saying
when I listed all those
let
other
me,
folks,
all right, let me clarify why that's not contradictory. So in the case of a hypothetical poll of 7 or 8 Democrats against Trump,
that
and
includes Biden, though. Biden is in that poll.
yeah, and so what I saw in that poll was that it didn't really matter which Democrat you put up against them; the results were largely the same, and not good. And what I'm saying there is there's no differentiation in my mind, precisely because of a lack of name recognition or familiarity with these other options. Okay, but when you poll Biden versus Trump, there's complete familiarity. Okay, so when you have polls going back a year that just consistently show Trump slightly ahead, I mean that's there's a rare outlier that shows Biden ahead, particularly weak in the key battleground state polling. I just almost never see good news on Wisconsin. Looks kind of okay for Biden. The other ones look competitive, but it's just not good. And so you talked earlier about you stopped watching NPR because of the red wave, partly, and that's true. You can't look at polls and say um, oh, we're doomed because, well, the polls show a really tight race that we're slightly behind. I mean, that's ridiculous. But at the same time, I'm saying perception has a lot to do with what's going on in terms of how people are reacting to this, whether Biden is viable or not. If he were ahead in the polls all year by 1 or 2 points, then I think people would feel a little differently. Like, look, he's on a path to win. Why are we going to blow everything up and risk everything?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not been the pattern. The pattern has been, how are we losing to this guy? What is the reason we're losing to this guy? The economy is, in a lot of ways, really strong. Um, and a lot of it is people suspect that the public has a big problem with Biden's age. His age isn't that different than Trump's,
No, not at all. He's
but
3 years older.
he's has been prior to the debate visibly older. And people have concerns about it. And I'm going to just say it one more time here. I was convinced watching that debate that he should not be reelected with the responsibility of serving 4 more years. That doesn't mean Trump should be elected. It
Yeah.
means I'm not comfortable with him being the nominee. And I think one of the worst parts of this is that um, everyone I know had no problem going to anybody and explaining why Biden should beat Trump, why Biden should be reelected until that debate. And now it's like, yeah, he looks old. He doesn't look like he can take another 4 years. I can't lie about that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem. It's not like today. It's like project forward 4 years. And the Republicans will pummel the Democrats on that from now till election day.
Oh, they're absolutely gonna.
And
That's exactly what it's gonna be. It's gonna be nothing but Biden is old. Biden is old. They won't have one
it's
writer. I forget
true.
one writer. I forget who it was saying they're not even gonna have to doctor footage anymore. They're just gonna use footage from that debate. The
That's right.
my
And
main
you
my
know,
main worry is that I don't think there's anybody that can replace the guy effectively, and I think I'm beginning to worry that we're fucked and that we're gonna have another 4 years and probably 8 years and maybe 12 years of Donald Trump.
well,
That's what I'm worried about.
I don't know how long he'll live either.
I don't know how long he'll live either, but
Mr.
whoever's replacing,
Cheeseburger diet.
yeah, but whoever replaces that guy is not going to be, we're not going to have a regular election after that guy. I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there's another thing. Like,
They'll also put more,
imagine if Trump stroked out today.
oh, I'd be dancing
Who
down
would
the street.
who would the Republicans wind up with?
I know. Who would they wind up with?
What if the tables were turned, and all of a sudden they had to go into a convention and pick somebody? That would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Because it ain't going to be Nikki Haley, right?
No, it's not going to be Nikki Haley, but they'd have to, and it's not, and it's also not going to be Ron DeSantis, who's basically ruined
No.
himself and couldn't win. I don't know who they'd win, who they'd run actually. I mean,
Yeah, it'd be crazy.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, after, I mean, I don't know who the Republicans are going to run after Trump to begin with, because how do you follow up that clown show?
I mean, there's no predicting that.
No, there's no. Well, they don't really
I
have
mean,
much
who
of a
would have
bench.
predicted? Who would have predicted after Romney that it would be Trump? Like, no one.
Yeah, I know.
So you never know.
You never know. You never know.
Or who would have predicted? Who would have predicted after Kerry that it would be Obama?
Yeah, I
no
know.
one.
I know.
So I mean, I guess there were some people who maybe that's not entirely true, because Obama gave that speech at the convention that people really loved, and so people did start talking about maybe Obama should be the guy, but I don't think too many people thought it would actually happen. I guess it's more to the point.
Well, I'm not sure who's better than Biden at this point. I know you've got a couple names in your head, someone like Gavin Newsom, Whitmer. I
Well,
just don't.
the question is anybody worse? I mean, is it viable for him to uh, win this election at this point? He wasn't winning it before this happened. Now all his allies are out there on the record. So many of his allies are out there on the record saying he should step down. If he doesn't, they're just going to point. Well, the New York Times said you should step down. Paul Krugman said you should step down. Tom
Mm-hmm.
Nichols said you should step down. All these people said you should step down. These are your friends, your allies, and why are they wrong? I mean, that's one reason why it was a Democratic panic, but it's all on the record now.
Yep.
So is that? Are you going to tell me seriously that Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom is, they're younger, they're attractive, they're articulate, they're, energetic, they can raise money. You're going to tell me that they wouldn't energize this race? I'll tell you one other thing. Forget talking about this person versus that person. The one thing that's been clear in this election for a long time is that American people hate their choices.
Oh, yes, they absolutely do. Yes,
They
this is
hate
quite
their
true.
choices. I don't think it's fair, but they don't like Biden. They have been giving him bad marks since at least the ugly pullout of Afghanistan.
Yes, this is true.
That the honeymoon was over after that. He never got it back. Inflation has taken a nasty toll on his popularity with the American people. And Trump is Trump. He's just a fucking walking disaster. People are sick of the drama. They don't want Trump. They don't want Biden. So I think anybody steps in on either side, anybody who steps in and they're not Biden and they're not Trump, they're immediately in a good position.
No.
People are like, thank God I don't have to vote for one of those guys.
If
You know what I mean?
if that's the case, then your mouth to God's ear.
Well, and it's another thing. It's like the third party thing, right? Like a lot of these polls. I mean, we know there's a long history of third party candidates doing well in the polls, and then when it comes down to it, they don't do very well
at all. Yes, this is true.
Because when it comes down to it, they don't do very well. I mean, Ross Perot, even, who did really well, there was like some point in that campaign where he was ahead in the polls in '92.
Yep.
And it didn't happen,
in fact, the Republicans
right?
blamed him for Clinton winning, if I remember correctly. If it hadn't been for Ross
Perot, it might have a case for that. I mean, just this is getting off topic, but did you know that Clinton won in Montana and Georgia in '92?
No, I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, winning in Georgia in 1992 was not something you expected a Democrat to do. And winning in Montana was definitely something you didn't expect them to do. And Perot probably cost those two states to Poppy Bush. Not that it was determinative of the outcome of the election, but it's just an interesting thing that strong third parties can swing states.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And you look at RFK Jr., who is a buffoonish character. And he's been showing some strong polling numbers, and I don't believe that's something that would really materialize. But a lot of those people just wouldn't vote.
Yeah. On a side note, on a side note about RFK, I was up in Vermont last week, and I'm driving around. I saw an actual doctor's office, a dentist to be specific, that had an RFK for president sign on the lawn. And I was like,
I feel like dentists are the craziest people.
I was like, you're a medical professional. What do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Why are you supporting somebody who doesn't believe in vaccines, you moron? It's just like, what's up with that?
RFK has a long list of conspiracies that he believes in that are just facially ridiculous.
Yes.
But my point is that if you have a polls showing him with like 17% or something, that 17% is like definitely available to a fresh face.
That's okay.
That's actually a member of either party, Democrat or Republican, right? you know, honestly, like Ron DeSantis suddenly, Trump is incapacitated. Ron DeSantis somehow becomes the nominee. A lot of the 17% are going to go to him because
We
he's new,
actually
he's
we talked
fresh.
about that the how a few podcasts ago how you were saying that Ron DeSantis was better positioned than any of the other Republicans in Trump's wake. You wrote this a couple times over at Progress Pond as well about how
Yeah,
you know
yeah, sure. I mean, he has not helped himself. Um, but you know, he started out this whole thing. The reason he was running was because he had such a strong election, a re-election, and he swept in um, so strongly at a time when the Republicans overall underperformed.
yeah, I remember that.
And he had a really strong argument to say, like, look, I've got it figured out. Like, I just turned Florida into a locked red state. It's no longer a swing state. I did that.
Yep.
And, if you hadn't got bogged down in fighting Disney and the woke and all the stuff he decided to do, a strong governor from a big state who can raise big money. He can debate. He's a good debater. He is a his biggest problem was that he's just so weird. You know,
Yeah,
he's just a weird dude.
with
He and his wife are weird.
his weird fake laugh, his
Yeah,
his lifts, his foot lifts in his boots,
yeah.
his high heel go-go boots.
But compare him to, like, I don't know, JD Vance. I mean, JD Vance is a senator from Ohio. He's not even from Ohio, is he? I don't know. I thought he was from West
I
Virginia
don't
or
know where
something.
he's from.
I don't know. But anyway, JD Vance, like, if you watch Fox News, you know who he is,
Yeah, yep.
right? But like, what has he ever done? He's
He
never
wrote a
run a
book.
state. Yeah, he wrote a good book, but he never run a state, for 2 terms. He's never carried his party to, massive electoral success in his
Nope.
state. So I still think DeSantis has credentials that few other Republicans have. But I mean, I don't know why we're spending so much time, but I guess like it is true with that cheeseburger diet of Trump. Who knows when he keels over?
Yep.
Could be tomorrow. But he gets sentenced on July 11th.
Yeah, I know.
So
Yep, that's coming
that'll
up.
be an interesting game changer, right? I
Maybe.
th- I think the
I
left
mean,
should. Well, go ahead.
after he got convicted, the money started pouring in, right?
Yeah, yeah, money's worth something.
So it could be a game changer because the money pours, you might get more money. And
Well,
and we have no idea what the judge is going to sentence him to. Because
no.
my understanding, right, is most of these kind of crimes are not go to jail kind of crimes. And
Mostly if you have no criminal record. Um, yeah,
he's
but
got no criminal record before this.
it's kind of laughable, but
I
he
know.
doesn't.
He
Yeah,
doesn't. Nope.
yeah. He's been
And
he's been he's been held liable for sexual assault and
civil.
all yeah,
Yep.
but civil case, but that's what I mean. It wasn't criminal.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
I think the worst Trump is going to get, honestly, is an ankle bracelet. Because
could be.
the excuse will be that he needs campaign, blah blah blah, and once that happens, he'll start using the ankle bracelet as a point of pride.
It'll be interesting to see. There's a strong case for putting him in jail based on all of the uh, contempt of court and all the steps they had to take to protect people, the gag orders, the threatening the judge's daughter. There's it's not a normal case. So,
No,
but on the other hand, the judge does have to consider, like, what does it mean to put a presidential candidate in prison when he's supposed to be at his convention?
mhm. Now look,
um,
if it was me and I
yeah,
was the judge, it would be a very easy decision. Well, fuck around and find out, you
yeah,
know. But
yeah.
that we all know that that is not what we both know that that is not what's going to happen, and that in fact. if anything, the judge was extremely what's the word I'm looking for? It's he deferred often. He deferred
He
often,
he
and
he went out of his way.
he
He
went out
went
of
out
his
of his
way.
way to be fair and accommodating.
There was a lot of stuff that went on during that trial that if you or I had done the same stuff that Trump had done, we would be in jail.
Oh, no question.
We would be in jail.
Yeah.
And we'd be sitting there like Bobby Seals, gagged literally gagged in the dock.
We would have
Um,
spent that trial in jail.
yeah,
We would
but
have been, he would have locked us up and said, you're talking shit to the press. You're trying to influence the jury.
yeah,
I'm revoking your bail, and we'll bring you in a jumpsuit, and the jury can look at you.
yeah, and that's
Um,
not that didn't happen with Trump. And when it comes to
no,
sentencing, I have no doubt that the sentence is going to be way more lenient than anything you or I had could come up with. Guaranteed, guaranteed. He's a
well,
rich person. He's a powerful person, and we all know how that works in our court system. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Nine times out of 10, the rich and powerful get off.
I do think though, it may be more than probation, just because of all the factors that we just talked about.
Well, if that
So,
happens, I'll buy you a Coca-Cola.
but like when I say more than probation, I'm not disagreeing with you that it might be no more than some brief period of home confinement, or
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't
that's all
know
it's going to
what.
be.
Yeah, I don't know. But
Anybody thinking that the judge is going to throw the book at a rich, powerful ex-president is smokes more weed than I do.
well, I'm curious. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm not as confident in as you that it'll be such a slap on the wrist. But we'll see.
I've gotten incredibly cynical with
I
the
don't think that's cynical. I think that's a a fair assessment of the situation that you're making.
yeah
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that it could be more. It could be that you're wrong.
yeah
It could be because he's such a prick.
it could
Because
that this
Trump
is
was
true.
such a prick, and they do have to.
Anything is possible.
They do have to set, deterrents for other people in the future, and they do have to protect other judges and other trials and
I
things
mean,
like that.
remember they even let him do his probation interview remotely, which meant
Yeah,
that which meant that he didn't have to take the drug test that everybody else has to do.
yeah,
So they're already
exactly.
giving him special dispensation right there.
Yeah, you're right. You're
You
right.
know.
But we'll
So
see. But the one thing we do know is that on July 11th, which is coming up, that that'll be a big news event,
yes,
and
it will be.
it won't be it won't be bad news for Joe Biden.
No, it won't be.
It'll be bad news for Donald Trump, no matter what happens. I want to make a final point on this whole thing, and then shift to the French elections, and very briefly, and then wrap up.
I do have to admit that the thing with Biden and the debates has very much thrown me for a loop. The I'm not quite I'm you are more certain, I think, that Biden should drop out than I am. I'm not sure what he should do at this point. I'm not sure if dropping out helps. I'm not sure if dropping out hurts. The I was reading a lot of articles in one side or the other yesterday. I think someone at Lawyers, Guns and Money pointed out that with McGovern, who is McGovern's VP guy there, Eagleton?
Eagleton, yeah, the guy with the
That
shock therapy.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
That it
Mhm.
allowed that when he dropped out, it allowed the right to be the Republicans to be like, oh, see, they can't even, they can't even select a proper vice president. What is this going to say? How does this indicate how they'll run the government? It allowed the Republicans to redefine the McGovern campaign as weak and flailing. The
Yeah, I
and there are
think that
people arguing saying that if you do this with the Biden campaign, it's going to be the exact same thing all over. And the
one
stakes are
thing
so
is,
high right now.
yeah,
The
I think one
so
thing's flipped there, which is that Nixon was the incumbent, right?
All
Um,
right.
and so interestingly, Agnew, Nixon's vice president, very he had to resign shortly. He resigned before Nixon resigned
Yep.
for corruption. Had that happened um, right leading up to the election, and then like they picked Gerald Ford as the running mate before the election, that would have done damage to Nixon. He's in disarray, or something. His vice president's a crook. But because it happened afterwards, he's already been elected the last time he could be elected. But I think there is a different dynamic with Biden and Harris than there is with the challenger. So in the case of McGovern, people didn't really know who he was, and one of the first major decision he made was who his running mate would be, and he screwed it up, and so that was a big deal. People know Biden, they know Trump, so I don't think it's not like it's just there's similarities, I guess, but it's not a very perfect analogy. And I don't think McGovern would have beaten Nixon if only he hadn't screwed up his vice presidential pick. So I don't know. But I think there is one final thing I want to say on this, which is there is a difference between if Biden decides to step down, there's a difference between whether he does it soon and whether he actually accepts the nomination and then steps down. Because I believe if he were to do that, then he would have more control over who ultimately winds up replacing him. Whereas if he does it now, it opens the convention up.
Yeah.
And he will have a lot of influence over who the person should be, who he recommends, say, but he might not be able to control it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
So that's one argument. Like, hey, can he actually orchestrate this multi-step thing and hold the coalition together and all that type of stuff and come out on the other end of it ahead? And that's where Jamal Bowie is saying, I don't want to take that risk. And I understand that. I understand that.
Nor do I, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're more in the Bowie camp.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But like I said, I simply don't know anymore. I simply don't know anymore. And it's upsetting because I know that every year when there's a tough election, you get some people that are like, if so and so wins, I'm going to leave the country, blah 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 blah. But in this case, if Trump wins, I think I might have to be like done. I cannot imagine being a public school teacher under a Trump presidency.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine that. I cannot imagine my child would not visit me. My child is, as you know, is trans and Canadian and will not cross the United States border if Trump is president because they wouldn't be safe here.
Yeah. It's not safe for him. It's not safe for you. It's not safe
for anybody.
CNN pundits.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. We were talking about this the other day. I didn't see it, but you did. How CNN is like freaking out because they're like, "What have we done? What have we done?"
Yeah.
Because they're like
after the debate, they were like, it was for the first time in their lives, they realized that both cider, no consequences, horse race journalism, just potentially ended, our representative form of government and our free press.
Yep.
Oops
daisy.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I don't know if you're going to flee the country rather than stay and fight. Okay.
I'm not staying and fighting. I'm a 54-year-old man, dude.
Yeah, I know. We're long in the tooth, but it is our country. I think the one place you shouldn't go is France.
No, not France. Not right now.
Because the fascists are in the process of taking over that country as we speak.
Yep.
They're holding parliamentary elections. I I do see here as of 5 p.m. on Sunday today, that there was a 60% participation rate compared to the last election at this time of day. There was only a 39%. So that's up 20%. So it's a very high turnout election. I don't know if that's good or bad for the good guys. But all the pre-election polling is showing that the fascists are going to clean up. And I guess this is our next red wave test, Brendan. NPR told you that there'd be a red wave and there wasn't. They told us there would be a red wave in France today, and we will find out.
Yep, we absolutely will. We should find out. We should find out fairly soon because apparently they start the LG. I was just over at Lawyers, Guns, and Money, and they were saying that they tend to report very, very quickly after the election's over.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what time the polls close. I don't know if it's I don't know how whether they're open till 8 or
voting ends at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. France's public
Eastern our time.
Yeah, 8 p.m. French time.
Okay.
French 8 p.m. French time.
Okay,
and
so an hour and a half from now.
An hour and a half from now. Yes.
Okay, and
Yep.
who knows how quickly they'll start giving us results.
Yeah.
And the main thing that can happen there is that President Macron will have to allow a prime minister of an opposing party, and they may be Putin. Well, they will be probably Putin friendly.
Yep, probably.
Ukraine hostile. And they'll also be hostile to the entire European project. So, yeah, really, really, really bad. And that's what we're looking at in our own November if we don't figure out how to shore things up, because things do not look good right now.
Yeah, they do not look good.
So whether you want to roll the dice with Biden or freak out and try and figure out something else, we do not want Trump to win this election.
We cannot have Trump win the election. No one and nowhere is safe if Trump wins the election. No one and nowhere. It'll be we will yeah. I don't want to go full blown panic, but you can see all sorts of just terrible, terrible things happening in the United States if he wins another term. You could see
one reason people should donate to our Patreon is to help you relocate, Brendan.
Yes, for real.
Yes, you need some money. You need some money.
Help send Brendan to Australia or Canada.
Yes. Yes, at patreon.com/.
But for real, if Trump wins again, it will get ugly in the United States very, very quickly. And it'll get very ugly.
Oh, he's bent on revenge.
Yep.
Yeah. And he's gonna take over the Justice Department.
Yep.
He's gonna gut the Pentagon.
Yep.
He's not gonna listen to any judge that sells him anything he doesn't want to hear.
Yep, I know.
So
he's got those big camps set up for migrants and who knows what else, right?
Oh, we'll see. And then, Mitch McConnell, bless his heart, right? Like, he at least had the good sense to know Trump was a bag of shit, even if he didn't have the balls to stick up to him,
Yeah.
Whoever replaces him, Rick Scott or whoever the fuck, like, it's going to be whatever you want, Air Fuhrer, know?
Yeah, I know.
So
I know. It'll be bad.
Well, we don't need to tell our audience. They know how bad it is.
It is amazing that just a few short years ago, I remember having this conversation with you. It was during the Obama presidency. The Republicans were doing something stupid and obnoxious, and I was very upset about it. I forget what it was. And you were like, "Yeah, but this is all rearguard action, man. They're done. This is all rearguard action. We're not. These are the actions of people trying, trying to get out while the getting's good." And it's amazing that we thought a lot of this bullshit was done back when Obama was president, and now there's been this huge resurgence of worse Republicans.
One thing I've learned: pandemics make people insane.
Yes.
and inflation makes people insane.
Yep.
I always look back and I said, because I studied philosophy in college and a lot of German philosophy, 19th century, 18th century German philosophy. And I was fully familiar with like the achievements of German culture. And as how did these people wind up gassing millions of people? You know, how did that happen? Fucking inflation, man.
Yeah.
Like, do not allow inflation. If you want to avoid people going crazy and wanting to kill everybody and want revenge on everybody, because that to me, that's what I've learned. So people have gone plumb ass crazy, whether it's on vaccines, whether it's on knowing truth from fantasy. And the fact that anybody who's not part of the MAGA movement would consider Trump is just proof that people have gone insane about the
People have
price of
gone nuts.
fucking milk.
Yeah.
You know?
On that cheerful note,
Yeah.
let's wrap it up. This has been
Yeah.
the 12th episode of the Progress Podcast with Martin Longman and Brendan Squire. Please find us on Patreon, patreon.com/Progress Podcast. You can always search for us if you don't do the backslash thing. If you enjoy what you're listening to, please like and subscribe and share with your friends. If you really like what you're listening to, please give us some money so we can keep doing this. Patreon, how much did Patreon give us? I think we got a little money from Patreon, didn't we? Was it $14?
Yeah, something like that.
$14, folks. $14. That means Marty and I each got $7 so we can go get a pack of bubble gum. So please
Nice.
visit us on Patreon. Please share. We're on Spotify, Castbox, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Amazon. I think a couple more. But yeah, we will see you next time, and hopefully we'll have a more cheerful podcast for you. On that note, over and out. Our music,
All
by
right.
the way, is our intro and outro music, as usual, is provided by the Royal Hounds of Nashville, Tennessee. Please go check them out on Apple Music and Spotify. And we will see you next time, folks. Bye-bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.